Hello everyone, my name's Elit and I'm delighted to be joined today by Kirsty Cooper from Kirsty Cooper Consultancy, who's going to speak to us today about how redundancy can be a new beginning. Hi Kirsty.
Hi Elit.
Brilliant, so it would be great to know a little bit more about you and your background.
Fantastic, thank you Elit. Really pleased to be here today speaking to you as part of the Women in Wholesale vlogs. In terms of myself, my name's Kirsty Cooper, currently live in York, and my history briefly, 20 years supplier side, working mainly in soft drinks, working for companies like Coca-Cola, Britvic, launched Red Bull into the UK market as well as Monster, and also worked with Cathys in Europe and the US. Most recently had a couple of roles in slightly different area, just to give myself some breadth, working at Symington's Food in Leeds, and also Ramsden International, an export wholesaler.
Fantastic. And you mentioned previously when we've been speaking that you have experience with being made redundant a couple of times. What was that like? How did that feel?
Yeah, that's right, Elit. Redundancy is an interesting topic. I think it's something that you're not really trained about when you kind of go into your career and start your career. And I think in terms of, redundancy, I think you kind of talked earlier about why it is actually the start of something or the beginning of something. And that's something that I'd like to share my feelings about, what I personally went through and how that impacted me. And in terms of my feelings, I think there's a few stages, and one of the things I wanted to share with people today was a change curve model which I use, which really has helped me. It's called the Kubler-Ross change curve. It's available, just Google it and you can find it. And it talks about the stages you go through from a feelings perspective. And I think this is really important because it is a very emotional time when you're being made redundant. For me, in the couple of occasions that I've suffered from this, stage one is very much where you either get angry or upset. I think you ask a lot of questions, why me? Why my role? And there's kind of a huge amount of emotion, certainly at the beginning. I think what I've learned is, again, to accept that. I think one of the big challenges often you face is you kind of want to fight against that. And I think that doesn't kind of do you or anybody else any good. And one of my learnings would be certainly that, the quicker you can kind of get over the anger and upset, the better. It isn't personal to you most of the time, as much as you feel it is at that moment. And then I think as you kind of go through the time curve, you really start to go through different stages. For me personally, I'm quite self-critical, so I go into a lot of self-doubt. I start to question myself whether I'm good at my job. Am I a good person? You really start to kind of ask yourself difficult questions, which can really bring you down. And I think it's really important, again, to accept that part. Self-doubt is normal, and people who tell you they don't have it, probably not telling the truth. And then also I think you get a little bit of relief as you start to go through there, because maybe you're in a business that was having some challenges. Ultimately, redundancies are normally made by businesses because they're in a challenging time. They maybe need to reshape or restructure the business, and your role's no longer required. So actually, you start to think logically at this stage, and you start to kind of think about, well, do I want to be in a business where my role's not going to be contributing? Equally, I think you then also have that element of fear of, well, gosh, what am I going to go and do now? How do I find a new job? And I think particularly right now with COVID-19 and the impact that potentially has, and talks of obviously a recession, I think it's a very scary time for people. But I would say, I do believe that redundancy is a beginning, and I'm going to talk a little bit around that and my experience of it over the last few years. I think, as you start to get into that kind of accepting that you've been made redundant, you can really start to open your mind into what could I do? And I just kind of challenge people to really challenge yourself as to what you want to do. You don't have to stay in the same thing you've done for all those years. I've done 20 odd years in soft drinks, but it didn't stop me from changing and going and taking an experience with a wholesaler, for example. And then as you kind of get that confidence and you start to see what's out there, you can really start to kind of make your new world a reality. And that's what I've done with the invention of Kirsty Cooper Consultancy. Not the most original name, admittedly. However, it's about kind of creating something that's personal to me, and I'm passionate about helping people, and I believe by creating a consultancy, that's something that I can do and I can bring that's very different. It doesn't mean it's not scary. Starting a consultancy mid-COVID-19 has been rather challenging, but I have got a couple of jobs lined up, which has been great, and one I've been doing recently, which I'm really proud of. So I think just realising the art of the possible is something that's really important as you go through the redundancy transition curve.
Incredible. Yeah, keep going. I mean, how did you you obviously changed a negative into a positive with the change curve. What other kind of tips and advice would you give to people facing a similar situation?
I think it's a lot about mindset. Another kind of recommendation I'd make to anyone who watches this vlog is to pick up the book called Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck. I hope I've pronounced that right. It talks about basically a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And this is something that I've massively embraced in my last kind of 10 years of my career, more than ever. This is all about believing the art of the possible. And the reason I say this is, you know, I've had people who've worked for me who have maybe been a demand planner for 20 odd years, and when you sit down and talk to them and you ask them why they're a demand planner, they kind of can't really answer that question. And I have a friend who, I won't mention their name, but she'd worked in demand planning for 20 odd years, and we had a coaching session one day and actually found out that, you know, she wanted to work with kind of old people and animals, not with numbers. And really proud of her that in the last year she's actually just become a police officer. So she's gone into a totally different career change, 20 years as a demand planner. And I think this is the difference for me between people who will embrace redundancy and those who don't. You know, it isn't something that is happening to you, it's something you can use. You can use it as a springboard for success. You will get paid off in redundancy, so you get time, and negotiate well with that. Make sure you get the right amount of time for yourself. You need to negotiate, obviously, through that redundancy to get what you need. And then use that time and use that energy to really think about what motivates you. And I guess kind of building on that kind of being positive and that growth mindset is taking some time out sometimes is a really good thing. And it's quite hard to do when you're in the routine. You know, I do miss work. I miss kind of having that kind of going into an organisation and having lots of people to call on. But I've surrounded myself more recently with volunteer work, for example. So you can invest that energy into different things to learn more about yourself. And I think that's where I've got the positivity from, Elit, is that actually spending time doing things you love. So I love exercise. During COVID-19, I've actually set up my own exercise class on my street. It's full of people who are probably 10 to 15 years older than myself, many of them single or alone. And I now do a HIIT class 4 mornings a week, 9 AM on the weekdays, 10 AM on a Sunday. We socially distance, and or people do it from their bedroom windows or from their lounges. I stand in the middle of the road and they do a HIIT session with me, and it's tailored to them. It's not as hard as Joe Wicks, because most of them obviously wouldn't want to do that. We also put some stretching in there, so Pilates type yoga stuff. And that's something that's given me a huge amount of energy to kind of see people coming out and wanting to be part of that, and appreciating the effort I'm putting into planning it, but equally the benefits they get from that. So one lady recently told me she touched her toes for the first time in 30 years. And another also told me that she had a friend pop round the other day, socially distanced, and said, "Ma, you've lost some weight." And she said she feels she's getting a 6-pack, which is just unbelievable. And that's taught me a lot about myself in terms of the energy that I can give to others, and also the things that motivate me, which is seeing other people succeed. So I think, you know, surround yourself by doing things that you love and you're passionate about, and you can learn more about yourself to help you make decisions post-redundancy on what you want to do. And that doesn't mean you have to do what you've done. You can do that if you love it and it's something you're passionate about. You can find new opportunities out there. But I would also say that you can also change if you really want to.
Are you not tempted to become a full-time fitness instructor?
Fantastic question, Elit. Yeah, I do love exercise. No, because you know, this is not a full-time exercise instructor. I love exercise as part of everything that I do. Funnily enough, what I'd really like to do is, if I go and work with other businesses, is kind of complement my consultancy bizarrely with running things like that. So I just think it's something that's missing in today's business world. And I hope post-COVID, more people give the time up, take their lunch hours, or take half an hour at the end of the day to do exercise, because the benefits are huge, mentally as well as physically. I mean, I'm never going to be having a six-pack. I like my food and drink too much. But I think that's something that, you know, I'd love to offer actually as part of my consultancy, and something that's certainly a consideration.
Brilliant. And is there anything else outside of exercise that's helped you to keep a positive attitude at work?
Definitely. For me, kind of my third and final point for today is people, and your network. And this is why I love Women in Wholesale. This is why this initiative is so fantastic. It's an opportunity to meet brilliant women in our industry, who can really inspire and motivate you. And I've got some fantastic contacts through this network. So, you know, reach out to your network, reach out to your contacts. I would say surround yourself with your biggest fans and your most constructive critics. I think it's really, really important that you hear both. And this is where the growth mindset plays really, really key for you. I'm very fortunate to have some fantastic coaches in my life, who will tell me the good stuff and the bad stuff about me. And I really appreciate that. And I think we can always learn. So get people around you who build you up. It is really important to know what you're great at, and never forget that. And as I say, you know, get out there and volunteer and get involved with things. I volunteer for Minds Advisory Group, which is a charity that's closely connected with this sector, to help with fundraising. And that again can kind of give you that real sense of purpose, which you can often lose when you're made redundant. So I think this is something that's really key. And then, as I've said earlier, you know, self-learning, that growth mindset. What more can I do to be a better version of me? It doesn't mean you're bad, it just means you want to get better.
Brilliant. And can people in our industry contact you? And what exactly does your consultancy offer?
Well as fitness, exercise on the street, my consultancy business really is set up as I want to be an affordable solution for small to medium-sized businesses to kind of tap into the experience that I have in the big blue chip FMCG world. So whether that be commercial or business strategy, or negotiation strategy, it's those type of things that I'll be offering. I have a huge breadth of experience. I've worked in almost every function of a business. So HR, I've worked as a learning and development manager. I've worked as a director, both within a commercial forum and also an operational forum. And I've also worked in sales and marketing. So for me, it's, you know, go-to-market strategy, all that sort of thing I can support any business with, but in an affordable way. And I've recently been working with Pasta Friga GB, who are a refrigeration company in the UK wholesale industry. And, you know, it's just great to hear the positivity again from Simon, who's the owner of that business, with the support I've been giving him with his negotiation. He's got quite a large negotiation at the moment, and he's kind of said to me, you know, it's nice having a fresh set of eyes, being able to come in and give him that perspective as to how he can approach it. And he said the efficiency of his negotiation has been far greater from me being involved than if he were to run it on his own. So that's something I'm really proud of. And again, that gives me energy and hope.
Fantastic. Kirsty Cooper, thank you so much for joining us. We will include your contact details so people can get in touch if they want to, and I'm sure they will. That's all from us for the moment, and hope you can join us again soon. Thank you.